Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
In my association with Project Group, they definitely withheld information.
The whole fleet of them was on the ASA. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely.
Tyler, you need to turn you're muted. You're muted. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Are you there? I can't hear you. Did you mute? Is your mic muted?
Have I been muted this whole time?
You've been muted that whole time, dude.
I can't hear you either, though.
I can do the credits. Welcome everybody to Total Disclosure Podcast with Tyler Roberts.
Sorry, guys. I'm having.
He was very quiet there, but he's
clearly
back.
Oh, there we go. So my whole intro was just blank.
It was blank. I don't.
All right,
you could have said anything.
All right, give me one more shot at this. I had to. I am so embarrassed. I am so embarrassed. Take two.
I'm going to let this guy appear tonight. Okay,
Yeah.
it's Gray is going to, instead of Earl Grey, you've got Gray. No.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Total Disclosure across all platforms, guys. We explore mysteries of the unknown, from sightings to conspiracy theories. I can't even get through this right now. I am so embarrassed. We dive deep into the unexpected. Just if you want to like the show, leave us a review on Apple, Spotify. It helps the algorithm. Hit subscribe, and yeah, more funny moments to be had, I guess, with or the alien overlords or the CIA just tapped in. I don't know.
You could do a blooper
Earl.
Hello.
Earl, I had this. I literally gave the date of disclosure. I gave so much information in that intro that the public will now never see. But man, you are the state director for MUFON of Southern California, my brother. And
That
I thought, who better to talk to about abductions and if they're still happening than you, as you are the legacy of Kathleen Martin, who is a friend of the show. You actually did a cameo in our episode with her. It was super awesome. For anyone who wants to check that out, it's in the archives. It was an amazing episode. But you are a part of the Experiencer resource team, and you really go above and beyond. And the subject I named the show tonight is, are abductions still happening? Before we get into that, I want to talk to you about some of the stuff that's been going on headline wise in the recent weeks. So let's start with you wrote a recent article about the Arrow historical report. It seems that you were a little bit muzzled, if I must say. No, by me reading it, I deduced that maybe you had some more thoughts.
Well, I mean, I do write a regular column for Outer Limits magazine, which is it's a UFO periodical that's based in the United Kingdom. And my friend Chris Evers, he's the publisher, and normally I write about one of my cases every single month. MUFON, about 6 years ago, they okayed for me to publish, the better redacted cases. I take the names and all that out so that, people are not doxxed, God forbid.
Yeah, it's the worst.
And I kind of adhere to HIPAA law standards because I'm a retired nurse of 40 years. I retired sort of right before COVID hit. But anyway, I was asked by Chris to write something different this month. My views on the report that came out from Arrow, Sean Kirkpatrick, who was the head of that. And I have friends that spoke in front of the Arrow group,
Right.
and congressional members, Bob Salas, David Schindley, in particular. Both of them had similar experiences where they had been the commanding officers of military ICBM bases and had incursions of UFOs on their bases that caused the missiles to be intentionally taken offline, sitting there in their launch bays. It wasn't an electro, I used to kind of figure, well, maybe it was an electromagnetic pulse that they used. No, it was much more refined than that. And the EMP would have taken out the radio, the computer systems, and it would have even taken out their access to oxygen. It was an underground capsule that these guys were in that was totally enclosed against nuclear war, God forbid, if it happened, that they would be able to do their business, which would be to, retaliate to whoever had destroyed our side of the earth. And, if they were successful, the whole earth would be destroyed, right?
Well, you do know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
sure.
You do know that if a nuke is launched in our direction and it is confirmed, then we have a shoot. What is it called?
Iron Dome, so, I think they call it now.
No. It's basically, if a nuke is confirmed coming our direction, the immediate response is to empty, because they basically essentially are saying use it or lose it. So they launch everything that we have.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, it's an absolute. Annie Jacobson talks about it in a
mutually
book,
assured destruction. Yeah, I have Annie's book. I have a couple of her books.
She's great.
This is what was brought to Congress. Okay, this is what was brought to the Arrow investigation that was supposedly open-minded. Well, Project Blue Book was supposedly open-minded, and the Grudge Report, and kind of goes back. So anyway, I had, I'm dear friends with Bob Salas, and I'm friends with David Schindley as well. I had dinner with David when I was in Oregon last year, and we talked about this, mano a mano, about what their job was and what happened to both of them. I mean, it seems like our visitors, if they want to make a point, they do it twice, right? The overflight of the White House, or of the Capitol building, that happened in 1952. They did it once, and then they came back again. They overflew it again just to make sure that it was noticed, And the same thing happened. It happened in Malmstrom Air Force Base, and that happened in Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. And both times it was targeted at the missiles. It turned them off. Not like you could flip a switch and bring them back online. They had to take these missiles out and retool them. They were unlaunchable, unusable. And that I believe is what our visitors are telling us. They don't want us to destroy ourselves. They don't want. They're absolutely against mutually assured destruction, which we are still playing with the idea of. Well, nobody gets out of here alive, right? That's Jim Morrison's philosophy of life, and we all know that Jim Morrison didn't last that long, and we probably wouldn't either, with such horrible kinds of attitudes about stuff. But anyway, this is what was presented to Arrow and to Sean Kirkpatrick. And so when I read the Arrow report that came out, I was, as the Brits say, I wasn't exactly well shuffed. I was quite angry about it. I was very angry about it. And so I wrote a piece, but we don't want to be litigated either. If it's in print, I guess that would be more of a possibility. So I kind of, I didn't change my article. I think that you can catch my outrage about this whole thing, about how it was all shuffled under the carpet. And Kirkpatrick said that there was no evidence whatsoever that was presented to him. And I'm sorry, I've heard the evidence myself firsthand. I have copies, word for word copies of what they presented to Congress and to the Arrow, the people that were involved in this. It was very, very compelling. And I would certainly like to know what natural phenomenon it could have possibly have been, or what they could have mistaken for UFOs, when they had both cases, a lit up UFO, a disc, came over the base. It hovered over the base camp in both instances. People were huddling, calling down on the radio, freaking out. Oh my God, it's a UFO, it's a flying saucer. And this thing, targeted the missiles, shut them off, but left, thankfully, didn't affect the oxygen or the computer systems or the radio systems. Everything else was, just the same as ever. But I don't think that we have a way to do this. But this happened in the 1960s. It happened 1967 and 1968, a few months away from each other.
It's important to note that not only did those events happen here, but after the fall of the Soviet Union, George Knapp recovered files that this happened in Russia as well. And it happened to a degree where they almost launched against us, thinking that it was us that shut their nuclear weapons off. It almost triggered a world war. So and then there's been, and these nuclear weapons, it's not like they're linked to each other. To shut one off is a feat in itself. To shut 10 to 12 off when they're not connected, they're separated by miles, and they're meant so if one goes down, they all don't go down. to shut them all off and then turn them back on. And they took these things apart piece by piece, and there was nothing
Yes.
wrong with them.
That's right.
Nothing wrong.
Well, they were turned off, but they had to be they had to take them out of the silos, and they had to fix them. They were shut off, and it didn't make any sense, but it happened twice in a row.
Right.
And I think and there was an incursion of a flying saucer. A flying saucer. It was a disc in both cases, you know. And in one it was more of like a plasma, bright red plasma colored disc. But you know, I mean, we don't have anything like that. We certainly didn't have anything like that back in 1967 and 68. And boy, I would sure like to know what natural phenomena that could have been. So to say that, you know, the disingenuousness of that report that came out, it definitely got my hackles up. I mean, my original, what I wanted to say about Sean Kirkpatrick was kind of pulled back is a British audience, okay? And you know, you can get away with certain words in Britain that maybe you can't get away with here. But my original, you know, description of Kirkpatrick was just another wanker in the circle jerk of officialdom's disinformation campaign. You know. I'm still proud of that line. I think it is pretty accurate. It's not in the article that got pulled, but now you have it. That was, you know,
that's my new title for this video. Or at least
I'm good with it. They can go after me, I guess, if they want. You know?
Sam actually brings up a good point, because a lot of people are saying that this is the modern day Project Blue Book. I would disagree with that statement wholeheartedly, because at least Project Blue Book got boots on the ground, investigated. Yeah, of course, they had higher ups that had predetermined outcomes, you know, i.e. swamp gas and all these things. And, you know, J. Allen Hynek later on in his life, you know, became a believer and almost a knower, if you will. But
I got my Hynek shirt on. Check it out.
Yeah,
I was hanging out with his sons last night.
Well, I'm hoping to get his. Yeah, I'm hoping to get his son on the podcast. Thanks to my good friend Earl Anderson. But we'll see. Total disclosure, audience. We'll see.
I sent him your info, so I told him you're a friend, so he'll probably.
But well, so God, I forget what I was saying. I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about Condon and the Blue Book, and it is mock too.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a Condon style play. It is not.
He had his mind made up.
Yes,
Condon
and that
did, before the evidence came in, and with Blue Book, it was definitely messed with, and they were definitely the gatekeepers of information were not giving Hynek and Valet and company the better reports. They were gatekeeping those and keeping them to themselves. So and Hynek knew this. I mean, that's why eventually he just threw his hands up in the air and said, you know, that there is something to this phenomena, and these guys are being disingenuous. Yeah. So yeah, Hynek made good. Condon didn't. My friend Greg Bishop, you know, he put out the ufology tarot deck last year that has all these classic golden age people from ufology in there. So you've got, you know, Whitley, and you got Valet and Hynek and Strieber and all these great people, but he gave Condon and Carl Sagan the devil card and they kind of deserved it, because they were the ones that lied to the public. So
well, Sagan, I definitely think Sagan was paid.
He was
by the government.
He got JPL. They gave him JPL.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, I think he was paid to to downplay. And you know what? I'd be hard pressed to say that people like Neil deGrasse Tyson aren't being the same. The because it's just like it is so over the top. And I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson goes out of his way to like make videos and put them online and degrade the topic. He goes that far. And he consistently mocks the idea that we'd be of any interest to any civilization more advanced. And I'm like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And first off, didn't you, Neil deGrasse Tyson, get your start with something that was theoretical with black holes? Black holes were theoretical until they were discovered. Then they were reality. So what we're doing is we're in the process of making it reality, making it known. So for a guy like that to be so active against a community like ours, it's like, who's paying you, buddy?
Close-mindedness. And as the good Dr. Hynek said, ridicule is not part of the scientific method. But all these guys, they wind up leaning into ridicule. That's their final outpost, I guess. And it's unfortunate. And as far as Carl Sagan goes, and I've talked with Kathleen Martin about him, and she said that Stanton Friedman came into the possession of some documentation that showed that Carl Sagan was sort of channeled away from his original ideas. You know that Carl Sagan's very first paper that he published in 1962, his first dissertation, was more or less ancient aliens theory. He said, instead of listening for, distant radio signals, you should get archaeologists to do deep digs and look for stuff that doesn't belong, in the strata of geology. And that was Carl Sagan's, initial paper, and you could get it online. It was available until it was taken down by his widow a few years back. But that is true. 1962, that was his viewpoint. And apparently, or according to Stanton, they told him point blank, wouldn't it be unfortunate if a young guy like you with such, potential, if nothing happened for you? And then they kind of gave him the offer of JPL if he would divert his attention to something other than digging for archaeological evidence that we've been visited. That speaks volumes to me. Also, Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, these were guys that were vocally against UFOs. That was a problem for me growing up. It was confusing because my mom, who worked for officialdom, said it was very real, realer than I would ever know, is how she put it. It's realer than you'll ever know, son. And but then I would read my favorite science fiction writer, Arthur Clarke, the bastion of the stupid. Well, I happen to have read the correspondence between Dr. J. Allen Hynek and and Arthur C. Clarke. Paul Hynek does have the correspondence, the actual paper letters between his father and Clarke. And Clarke finally said, he told Dr. Hynek, he said, I believe that what you are doing and what the evidence that you are finding is very, very valid. And I think that science should look at this. But, I can't say that in public because I would never be invited to another moonshot again. And it's there. I mean, I've actually got a copy of that letter that Paul took a screenshot of for me. And
wow.
So I imagine they're still doing that now. I mean, it's this phenomenon.
I mean, why wouldn't they be?
They will have to admit that they can't protect the public from it, and they don't want to do that. And they're going to have to answer for things like James Forrestal falling out of a window, and things like that, And I think that there's bodies buried around this, and It's
Well,
very.
what do you,
They're going to have to like tell everybody that was involved that they'll be forgiven of their sins. I guess.
yeah,
So I understand.
I've always said that there's gotta be we gotta meet the government halfway on this thing, because if we don't, nobody's gonna come forward with any information. They're not gonna
Yeah.
incriminate themselves. But what I want to do
Yeah.
is, um, Earl, I want to get your, because the Tonight Show is about abductions, and are they still happening? I want to kind of transition. Maybe we could talk about David Grush a little bit later, after the break. But
Sure.
let's talk about your experience, and let's talk about what happened to you, and then we'll get into some of the more recent cases of abductions that maybe you could talk to us about and enlighten the audience on. From here on, it's your show. I'm going to be here for the ride, and the floor is yours, my
Oh,
friend.
thank you. He knoweth not what he doeth. But yeah, you're giving the show
Thou
to me.
shalt not
But
pass.
yeah, exactly. Gandalf. Um, well, I don't want to concentrate too much on myself, but
Well, I
I
do.
grew up knowing that we weren't alone. I grew up knowing that we weren't alone because my mother worked for Howard Hughes, and she had actually, when I was 5 years old, she told me that she had worked in an underground facility for them, and she said that we were already in touch with extraterrestrial life, that there is an intelligence out there, and we already know about it, and it's real. And and I lived with that for many years, and I would try to get her to talk more about it, and she wouldn't. She signed NDAs on all that stuff, but every once in a while she would talk. When she passed away in 1999, I knew I wasn't going to be getting any more information from Mom, and it bothered me because she told me that it's realer than you'll ever know. And I even mentioned to her, I said, this is like one of those deep human important questions. What happens when you die? Is there a God? And is there, are we alone in the universe? And I think that she knew that I cared about that very, very much, that question. And it's probably why she opened her mouth when I was a little kid, because she saw me. My safe place would be surrounding myself with Time Life books, opened up to Jupiter and different planets and the early space program, and playing with my space men, the little plastic. I wanted to play with astronauts, not army men usually. And she knew that. But when she passed away, that was the end of my connection to all that. And so I became a MUFON field investigator, just because I felt like I wanted to know. I thought that it was realer than I knew, and I wanted to know and wanted to see what I could do about it. Now, something strange happens when you really poke at this phenomena. You find out that it's interactive and it pokes back. So about 9.5 years ago, 9 years ago, around there, I did have a face-to-face encounter with entities. Scared the hell out of me. I asked for it. I was trying, like, meditating and sending out that message. I want to meet you. If taking my DNA is the price of the ticket, go for it. You can have my DNA. And long story short, it worked. If you want to hear the details, I think there's a Ancient Aliens episode where I talk about it, and multiple podcasts out there that I talked about it.
What do you mean? Anonymous asks, what do you mean you asked for it? So
I tried
maybe
like
you
a
can go in.
CE5 meditation thing. Is what
Where were you when you
I
did that,
tried.
though?
I meditated. I was in Burbank, California, in our old house, working on UFO reports for MUFON, like nuts and bolts UFO reports.
Oh, wow.
And you know, I what I was hoping for was maybe, you know, maybe Valiant Thor would show up, or you know, the tall whites, that they would, you know, come on, Earl, we're going to show you the universe, right? Naive, you know, me. But I had just kind of stuck my toe in the pool maybe 6 months before, and I was naive about this, even though I'd read, you know, a Bud Hopkins book at that point. I didn't really think it would work. But careful what you watch for. You know, careful if you stare into the abyss, it might stare back. And that did happen. You know, my wife was involved. I mean, it
Oh,
happened over
God.
a week's time. There were 3 different incidents. You know, the first night was me, and they came through the wall, and they took DNA. They took lots of blood, is what they took. Scared the hell out of me. I thought they would exsanguinate me or something, which they didn't do. They left me as they found me. But 2 nights later, my wife is the one who's shaking me, and our room was still flooded with light. And her, you know, what she had to say was, you need to tell your little friends they need to leave us the F alone. I didn't sign up for this. And 2 nights after that, our house was like God's spotlight came down. We woke up again. We both ran to the window. It was coming from outside as well as in our room, this light with no source. And I found out that this phenomena is personal. And I was confused. I was confused because I was very nuts and bolts about this stuff. I tried CE5 on a lark, and I didn't do it like with a little laser pointer and crap. You know, I did like the, you know, meditate and stare at the mandala in the corner, you know, the room, and invite them. But anyhow, at that time, I was working for my state director here in MUFON, thought that maybe abductions or visitations would happen, maybe very, very uncommonly. He felt like, you know, Betty and Barney Hill might have been real, and, you know, some of the, you know, Travis and some of that stuff. And I was kind of encouraged not to talk about it. And I didn't. I mean, I was bumping into ridicule when I did talk about it. So I didn't. I would talk. I would, if I had a new field investigator, like I was made chief investigator at that point, a little while after, despite having met aliens. Not what my state director wanted to hear at the time. He knows better now. I guess he had his own little encounter, but I would tell my new field investigators, because I felt like they deserved that caveat, like a heads up. If you poke at this thing, just be aware this is what happened to me. Be careful what you ask for, and just know that there's no. It's not like you're looking externally at this phenomenon through a microscope at something on a you know, on a slide. You become part of the experiment when you start looking into it. You're entered into this phenomenon. That's what my experience has been. And I eventually, like maybe a year after this had happened, I sought out Kathleen Marden, and I was meeting with her for lunch. I needed to talk with somebody that was understood this, because I felt like the floor was pulled out from under me. I didn't have anything to go by. It really confused me. And Kathleen was wonderful. And we talked for an hour over lunch. And at the end of that hour, I felt my fears were allayed. I felt like I understood more about it than I had before. That people will have seemingly benevolent visits and abductions. Some people will have seemingly malign, you know, visitations and abductions. Mine scared the hell out of me, and my wife was not happy about it. You know, for her, you know, I'd entered her into this horrible, you know, thing that she'd not
Right.
asked for. And she still
She was
maybe
like,
feels a little bit like that. I don't know, she's not happy
right.
about that. She doesn't
But
would be happy to not have anything like that happen again.
but when you first told me your encounter when they came through the walls, can you describe can you just describe that night again and
Hmm.
what you were doing, your routine, um, and how it just happened literally
Sure.
like as if you were turning the TV on, like it just happened. Because that's what threw me the most.
Well, I had been working on MUFON cases, and I had a case where a guy saw a gold star-shaped mylar balloon, and I you know star-shaped mylar balloon IFO, and I went upstairs. We had like a loft bedroom, heart of Burbank. If you know where the Chandler bike path is, we were on that, so it was not rural. They can get you if they want you. I went upstairs. I put a bunch of pillows behind my back because I'd had a hip surgery a few months before that, so I felt more comfortable if I was sitting in a semi-recumbent position. My nurse lingo coming up there, but not lying down, but kind of like lazy boy, kind of lying down, right? So I'm lying down and the lights are out and the room starts glowing mysteriously. It was kind of this blue light, or it had the feeling of blue. It was almost synesthesia, to where the light had the feeling of blue to it, and it was calming. We had a cricket problem in our rafters. It was always present. There were suddenly no crickets chirping. No external sounds from outdoors, no car sounds, no sirens. You're heart of Burbank. It's a bustling urban area, urban hub. Um,
Right.
the area in front of our bed started spinning, almost like this circular motion. It was had a color to it. It was sort of a sepia, yellowish tan color, and it almost looked like a little whirlpool. It was very weird. It opened up from the center out, and light came out of this hole in space. It wasn't in the wall. I say they came through the wall, but they came from a hole in space. I mean, it wasn't the wall. And I don't think they had, like a UFO parked outside, because, I mean, our neighbor's house was 10 feet away. There's a little alleyway in the neighbors. But I, at this point, could not move. I was starting to feel anxious about the situation, although it was very, very peaceful. They kind of run the narrative. Time seemed strange. I was not asleep. As I remember looking down, I could see my wife lying there. She was out to the world. And I could see these little figures coming towards me, and
And
I couldn't move. I couldn't
you
move at
couldn't
this
wake
point.
her up
No, well, at this point,
because you couldn't move.
I was like in their spotlight, and it was I wasn't thinking that way. I was so amazed and surprised and scared that I kind of forgot about my surroundings, and they came out of this hole in space. And there were three on my left side, or wait, there were three on the right side, and there was one on the left, I think. They came up to the foot of the bed, and they acted like a surgical team. There were tubes that they put on me, like large, that they just brought in with them, and they were taking what I felt was blood and energy, although it didn't leave marks. This whole thing was so
Energy?
messed up. Energy, like life force energy, is what it felt like. I may have passed out at one point. I mean, I felt like I was fading, and I was scared. I thought that I was going to die. I wasn't getting a telepathic message from them. And this is what confused me. I'd read Bud Hopkins at this point. I knew that usually people would there would be like a tall guy there that would telepathically tell you, "Don't worry, you're going to be safe." And I didn't get that. They were just very methodical and no communication whatsoever. The black eyes, the little gray, the oversized heads. The mouth is like infantile. It was like an afterthought, a slit. Nose was prehensile. I mean, it was just very like half baked, And they did their thing. They apparently got whatever that was that they wanted. I was talking with one person that I know. It's kind of an interesting person that's involved in some official stuff. And I said, well, they never took my DNA. And she said, well, what do you think your blood is? That's the purest form of your DNA. And they took a lot of that, it felt like. I didn't feel right for 2 days. I felt weak, like I'd given too much blood at the blood bank.
Right. But
well, they finished this. It seemed like it took 15 minutes for them to do this thing. And I tried to communicate with them with my mind. I knew that much, that they supposedly did this, and there was nothing coming back. When they left, it was the tubes just came off of me. They went backwards the same way that they came in. They didn't turn around and walk. I mean, you can't really look away from their black eyes either. That's the other thing. Everything that I was watching was sort of on the periphery of because once you look in their eyes, you can't look away. There's some kind of magnetic thing that happens. They went back into the distance. It was dramatic the way it happened. It seemed intentionally dramatic. The hole in space, it did the same thing backwards. It spun again, and it went back to a dot. And there was a TV set sitting there, and the shadows in the room. It was still lit in our room, but it wasn't like that brightness. It was coming through the portal or hole or whatever, Einstein-Rosen bridge or whatever it was that they used to come in by. It took me a while before I could move. When I could, I shook my wife awake, and she was angry as hell. Even though the room was still lit with this weird light, she didn't. It was like, you joined this crazy UFO group. Is this what I have to look forward to? And I just huddled, and I felt like 2 nights later, she got it.
But beforehand, when you first shook her up and she's kind of disoriented, actually, let me backtrack. When you came back,
I was yelling and screaming.
The
neighbors had to have heard it,
Right. When you came back out of the vortex, were you back in the same position on the bed that you left in?
Yeah, it was like I was still there, sitting with my back was kind of up, but I'm yelling and shaking her, and it was traumatic, and I didn't know who to talk with. I mean, I called up Peter Robbins because he worked with Bud, right? And I'd met him on the internet, and he didn't really know me. I'm just like some dude, that he'd maybe liked to post on, on Facebook or something. But I'm telling him all this crazy stuff, and he was very sweet, very kind, but he didn't like jump in and start guiding me. I is probably who is this guy, and is he a wannabe Travis Walton, or I mean, I don't know what Peter was thinking, but I really felt alone. I didn't know who to go to. It wasn't really until Kathleen Martin. And, after this whole thing happened, and Lisa and I we call it the weird week, because it was 3 nights in 1 week. And when I finally did open up to Kathleen, it seemed to open up the world to me. I felt peace about everything. I felt like I didn't understand it, but I was able to accept it. And that's where a lot of people fall in line with this phenomenon, which is still active. I'll say, and I still have people, being a member of MUFON's Experience a Resource Team. And I asked Kathleen when I talked with her, I said, well, this group, I think I might want to be part of it. This is helpful, and you helped me, and maybe I can. And she shook my hand. She said, Earl, what do you think we've been doing the last hour? Welcome to the ERT. And I had to be mentored in and stuff. They have a process, but that was how I became a part of MUFON's wing that deals with this high strangeness phenomena, which is still active. I think the motives have changed. The DNA farming doesn't seem to be as prevalent now. It seems like people now get more downloads, teachable stuff. I had one police officer who was he was on duty, and I had to keep his name and all that stuff out of the press and stuff because it could ruin his job. He is still working as a police officer, but he felt he was abducted from his cruiser, and he started getting these downloads at night where they were teaching him about 0-point energy. And he was a D student in math, but he was understanding it. They were giving him the capacity somehow. And I hear a lot of stories like that. Military that are taken up into low Earth orbit, shown like nuclear exchanges, and then the entities will wait to see what that person's reaction is. Sometimes they'll be violent, they'll be angry, hateful, and but some people they react in a compassionate and empathic way, where they're worried about our future, and they're crying, and they're, it seems like people, it's almost like this teachable moments kind of abduction visitation stuff that's happening now. Not as many people are taken for their DNA. Once in a while, I'll still get somebody that's happened to.
So clearly, the abduction phenomena is still happening. It's just potentially shifted into a different phase. If there was an agenda, the ERT and the data, and maybe give us your opinion, your educated opinion with the data available to you. If there was a main contender for an agenda, what would your hypothesis be for that agenda?
And we're not told to think a certain way in the ERT.
Right,
I mean, there are people that think all different forms of hypotheses about it. But Kathleen and I, and it seems like Sev Talk, my colleague, who I'm going to be doing KGRA's MUFON radio program with in the future, but we've all kind of come to the same conclusions without having talked about them. We know that there are three things that experiencers are told. Doesn't matter what their background is. Doesn't matter what their political background is, if they're religious, atheist, agnostic, it doesn't matter. They're all told the same three things. It's a trifecta of messages. Number one, that nuclear weapons are wrong, evil, and you cannot survive a nuclear exchange, so don't try it. And war is kind of bundled up in that as well. Like war is this human thing that isn't quite understood out there in the greater universe. But we're specialists, and apparently that's disturbing to our visitors. So that's number one. Number two, everybody is told the same thing. They're shown ecological disasters happening on Earth, global warming turning Earth into the surface of Mars, and people are given visions and dreams, and this is part of what people experience now. as experiencers. So the second bit of the trifecta is stop treating the world like it's replaceable. It's not. Stop thinking that it's your resource to just plunder, like you'll just go to the next planet over and do it again. You know, there seems to be disgust from our visitors about that attitude and how laissez-faire we are about, you know, just plundering everything and the beauty of Earth and this beautiful biodiversity that we live in for our wallets, you know, and for personal fiscal gain. So that's 1 and 2. Number 3, what everybody seems to hear is better yourselves as a race. Raise your vibration. Live on a higher frequency. Now, you know, Dr. Medich, who runs the ERT, you know, this is a guy who he was a orthopedic surgeon after he was a baseball star, you know, hot pitcher for the Yankees. He's got the Topps card and all that out there. But, you know, I remember him going, what is this? Raise my vibration. What am I supposed to shake? What are they talking about? You know, and of course, it's talking about living on a higher level, that we're kind of living on this meat level, the third dimension. And it's about me. Earth is the center of the universe attitude and out for myself. And that seems to be adverse to what they want for us. I think that they want us to see ourselves as part of the intelligences of the universe. I think that the problem is that humans left on their own, that we would create Star Wars. And I think that our visitors are hoping for Star Trek, that they want something where we're adding to the richness of life's great pageant. But I think that humans, we still have that animalistic thing that we brought down from the trees, that is me first, and what's in it for me, and so that's the trifecta. We see that from case to case to case, thousands of cases, 8,000 cases that the ERT has had, and it seems like this is the repeating pattern of messages. And it's quite simple. And it doesn't sound like an invasion to me. Doesn't sound like kidnapping to me. I mean, I think that, you know, they were taking our DNA in case we destroy ourselves. Maybe they'll replant us somewhere or wait for the radiation to die down and try again. But now I think they've got the DNA, and now I think they're trying to get us to save ourselves. And I think it might be a lot like the Prime Directive in Star Trek, where this is our job. You know, they're not going to come down and land on the White House lawn and turn everything off. I mean, they can do that. They turned off the missiles over at those ICBM bases. I'm sure they're perfectly capable of doing it again. But this world is for us to learn and for us to become space worthy. And so this is my personal belief and hypothesis around this. I could be wrong. I mean, they might be here to eat us. I hope not. But the evidence seems to point to something a bit more benevolent than being the main course of some dinner out there.
Yeah, I would say that they're here to
They want our women, right? They want
yeah, either that or they are what is often described as the missing link, you know? They
maybe it's us from the future. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
Dr.
I'm
Michael Masters has a
great, Mike, you know.
Yeah.
That is
So
a hypothesis. It's valid.
You're gonna get all these people on the show for me. That's a shout. I'm just kidding, Earl. No, but can you talk to us?
You're a buddy, Todd.
I know. You know I love you too, and I really do. Can you talk about any cases that you've had recently about abduction, and about downloads. Southern California is, I mean, people don't understand that Southern California is the what's your rank in terms of reports? Are you guys must be up there in the top 5, right?
We get the most. We
You're
get the
number
most
1?
reports. I think it's
Yeah?
us. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think
Yeah.
it's Florida, and I think that Texas is, in there close, Arizona, but we are still the top of the pile, and I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. We're near the coast, and I think there's something going on between here and Catalina Island. That's where they saw the Tic Tac.
Yeah,
And I keep getting
I
cases
visited.
from the same area. I keep getting cases from there. Same
I
coordinates. I mean, I have the coordinates from Kevin Day. He took
Me
a
too.
photo of the logbook years ago. Yeah, I got them. And people keep seeing stuff there. Commercial pilots camping on
I
East
saw
Catalina
something.
Island. Yeah, that's people do there.
I saw something at the northern tip of the island. However, I don't know if it was a plane pointed the wrong way, you know,
Mhm.
because
Could have been. Yeah.
it could just been, but whatever,
Well, I
whatever.
had one case. I had one case where, and I like to talk about this one. I hope I haven't talked about it before on your show, but
It's okay.
commercial pilot and his new wife and his brother-in-law, they were camping on East Catalina Island, and it's late. It's around midnight. He's sitting there in a lounge chair, and this guy, he's a commercial pilot. He usually does the run along the California coast, so he's good at dead reckoning distances, and he knew where he was looking at. He saw right like 10 miles out. It was right between Catalina Island and the mainland of Seal Beach. He saw a gold sphere come out of the water, and he said that you could see it. It was gold, like bright, bright, bright gold. 300 feet across, no markings, no windows. It just came out of the water. And it was hanging there for a while, and it started doing this crosswise dance up and down. He's yelling for his wife, yelling for his brother-in-law, bring the binoculars. Should have asked for the cell phone too, but they come out. But the time that it took the brother-in-law to grab the binoculars and for them to come out of the tent, this thing had resubmerged. So he thought, show's over. They're never going to believe me. My God. He's trying to explain to them what he saw. They're standing there, and it comes out of the water again. It reemerges from the ocean, and the coordinates are right where they saw the Tic Tac. They said that when they first saw the Tic Tac from the fighter planes, that it was causing this bubbling motion on the surface of the ocean, like there was some kind of force field, whatever was keeping it aloft was disturbing the ocean. Well, he saw the same thing happen there. This gold 300-foot sphere comes out again. Again, it's doing this crosswise motion. This time he had binoculars, and he said it was beautiful. It was just like this Christmas bulb, lit up like a Christmas light, but 300 feet across, came out of the ocean. It sat there for a couple of seconds then, and then it shot up out of the atmosphere, never to be seen again, apparently, or at least not by him. Now that is one of many, many sightings here in Southern California. And that, I get commercial pilots, military pilots. I get, sometimes they'll mistake something. Like I had a couple of Navy helicopter pilots that saw what they thought was a UFO. They got it on their infrared camera. It turned out that it was the two afterburners of a jet leaving. And I was able to, tell them which jet and what it was they saw. So we're really, really careful. And you can't use a scientific method because you can't repeat an experiment in ufology, but you can have scientific principles and be very careful. In that area, I've had boat captains with their entire crew. Again, where they thought they saw the full moon in the sky, and then they realized it was a quarter moon and it was over here, you know, and they're being hovered again by this gigantic spherical unmarked craft, you know, like huddling and afraid on the decks. Captain and a couple of crewmates spoke with me. Um, I could tell you about guys on aircraft carriers that have seen similar stuff. One case that wasn't in Southern California, I'll go into later, but here in Southern California, I think that we have all the aerospace stuff, right? Lockheed, Skunk Works is here. 3 different facilities I know of. Plant 42, Port Hueneme. There's one at Edwards, right? They're all 3 of those. We have underground bases. I know about the ant hill that Northrop has. Should I talk about that? Don't kill me. I know about, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Edwards, and then Area 51, of course, S4 is right over the Nevada border from us. And that's like, so it seems to be a hot spot. We've got Catalina Island, all traffic going on there. Channel Islands, where I had another flight crew put in a report last year. And the same flight crew had a sighting on the way to Hawaii back in 2005, I think it was. I have that case too, and photos of the flight log with all their signatures and drawing of 3 flying saucers on the flight log because they were flying into Hawaii, and they watched these 3 flying saucers 200 feet across each go in a triangulated pattern, holding pattern. Sat there just to kind of like, hi, hello, like the Cheshire cat, right? You know, and then suddenly they shot down below the horizon line, the limb of the earth, which they could see from that, you know, high altitude that they were at. But it's a hot spot here. Lots and lots and lots of very, very serious cases that come in, and people that get abducted and visited. That you, some of them you would, you know, federal agents and stuff like that I can't tell you who they are, but for the cases for you.
So what do you think that there's any credibility to the idea that hybrids exist and may be walking among us in some form or fashion?
Yeah. I think that they're trying to, I think that part of the agenda, and this is just a personal opinion, okay, but I hear from people that the evidence seems to point this way. People that are serious, people that I know that, you know, we're talking doctors, scientists, and, you know, people with, you know, parents in the judicial system and stuff like that, believe that they're hybridized. And some of them, you know, have weird stuff like, you know, prehensile tails that were cut off at birth, you know, arcane knowledge that they should have, or abilities. And my feeling is that perhaps some of the DNA farming that was going on was to try to create a less warlike human that's maybe more like them, that's maybe going to be closer to being able to help people understand that we are a risk to ourselves. You know, I'll change my attitude as soon as, you know, a UFO comes and threatens us with nuclear weapons. Okay, I will currently, I'll cry uncle, because that has not happened. Currently, it's human against human.
Yeah, currently we are the aggressors.
Yes, we chase after UFOs and try to shoot them down.
The Iranian case is proof of that. The Russian cases are proof of that. The Russians, after George Knapp also brought these files back that said that the Russians shot upon these things. They kinetically engaged these things for a while, and then said stop because they had lost up to 12 pilots, and said they put out a memo saying that these things have incredible capacity for retaliation. Do not
But they haven't
engage.
really. They will protect themselves, but they
No,
haven't
but
ever
that's what.
attacked
Yeah,
us. Now there are cases like there's the there's the one in Brazil, the Colares case, and there's some other cases that are out there that appear to
sounds
maybe,
more human.
it sounds very human. Little
Doesn't it
tiny
sound
UFOs that shoot
so
laser
human?
beams at the townspeople, right, in a little
Right.
village in the middle of nowhere. And then now the recent thing that's been coming from Peru,
Yeah.
where they looked like, where it looked like a Green Goblin flying on a anti-gravity
On a
surfboard type
jetpack.
thing, and
Yeah.
hoverboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this again, apparently the one girl that they tried to take and they failed. And I'll tell you, I don't think that, if an ET is going to abduct you, they're not going to fail. They're going to get you. Okay.
No,
But this
they
girl, they
walk. They
grabbed
come
her.
through goddamn walls.
I know. Well, they grabbed this girl and they're trying to take her away on this hoverboard out of Back to the Future. And the guy failed. The little girl was able to fight him off. And she said that she heard the two entities arguing, and one was arguing in like bad Spanish with an American accent. And the other guy was speaking in Spanish. So this sounds like, to me, like an op. And I don't believe that that's our visitors. I don't think that they're going to speak in any language. They speak telepathically,
Actually, he beat me to the point. Do you think that my labs exist?
I think that's probably a human thing. I think they're
they're
copying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even it goes back to, and I apparently there was that warning that Werner von Braun gave: beware the military-industrial complex, and I think that perhaps this is us trying to blame something on our visitors that we're doing ourselves. I mean, I believe that we have probably, I hope, after 70 some years, that we've had some success in reverse engineering some of this technology. And of course, Nikola Tesla and Townshend Brown was working with anti-gravity ideas way back in the 1940s. So, I think that we probably have a capacity now where we could falsify alien type stuff like that. And maybe they want to blame it on the ETs so they can keep doing their bad stuff. That's my feeling. I mean, maybe there's bad ETs that are working with the military. I can't explain my labs really, but that's my personal idea.
You don't have to. Honestly. I wrote something to you in the private chat. So we're actually going to take a quick break here. And for anyone that is watching on X, you will have to come over to YouTube to finish the program. We have so many people that are watching on Twitter, but Twitter is it's not a platform that it's not like YouTube where they pay their creators. So what I'm doing now is the first half of the show will be on Twitter, but for the second half you'll have to jump over on YouTube or Rumble. So just search Total Disclosure, and we'll be right back, guys, in just a brief moment.
Bathroom break.
Introducing the ultimate cognitive enhancement solution, BioMind. Today's video is exclusively brought to you by our sponsor, Adentia Herbals. Unlock your brain's full potential with a powerful blend of 9 meticulously selected plants and mushrooms, each backed by peer-reviewed research for their cognitive boosting benefits and safety. Adentia Herbals formula combines organic full-spectrum powders and potent standardized extracts, ensuring that you receive the optimal concentration of each ingredient's cognitive enhancing compound, carefully selecting the most desirable parts of each plant and mushroom to create a harmonious blend that supports your mental clarity and focus. But that's not all. They infuse each bottle with personal intention of improving the lives, the minds, and overall greatness of each of their customers. Because of their commitment to your well-being every step of the way, you're going to get an exclusive 25% off your order via www.adentiaherbals.com using our code TOTALDISCLOSURE at checkout. All the links will be in the description or on the screen. All right, so we're back, and now we're exclusively on YouTube and Rumble. So hopefully people come back over here and onto the YouTube. That is the game plan. So we had over 300 people watching, and
Oh, cool.
I hate, yeah, I hate to take it off of Twitter, but Twitter just doesn't. They don't do anything for content creators. It's just it's you know, you hate to do it, but it is what it is. So anyway, we were talking about certain cases and us engaging UFOs and how they won't engage us because for some reason, and it seems, do you think that it is benevolence or indifference? Because there is a difference. There is a fine line between the two.
There's a difference. I like to think, well, okay, free will. All right. We have it. Sometimes it goes out of control with us, probably, but there is free will. And if you look at humanity, you know, people will say about ETs, they'll call a whole race evil, right? And you can talk to Barbara Lamb and she can kind of set you straight on that. You know, she had like this wonderful tete-a-tete with this tall reptilian that manifested in her living room, and they had a long conversation because she was confused. You know, she'd been watching David Icke and you know, had people that had that question. But
Right,
I think
right.
that there's probably bad actors out there. We have our pirate, you know, our robber barons and our pirates to this day, and unfortunately, but you know, from what I see, I do think that the benevolent entities seem to be in charge. Because here we are, it's, you know, 7 years since Roswell now, and here we are, we're still our own greatest threat. I'll go back to that again, that you know, we have never had a threat from ETs. Mutilation cases, I'm seeing that pop up. Well, I don't know. We mutilate cows too. It always seems to
Yeah.
happen in
Yeah.
areas where there's where it's downwind of our nuclear test sites, right? So
Yeah.
maybe they're checking for how bad we've destroyed our atmosphere, and a cattle mutilation is another mammal, and and we eat them. So that would be my explanation for cattle mutilations.
Right.
So
And
and as
it,
far as human
yeah.
mutilations go, I mean, okay, closest thing to that I've heard is the Peruvian thing that's going on, where they were trying to take the faces off this little girl that they were unsuccessful in abducting. Said that these guys that were speaking in broken Spanish, that they tried to take her face off. It almost sounded like an
Right.
organ collection, like they were trying to, like there were some bad people that were doing some bad stuff for possibly rich people that can afford that sort of thing. I don't know. Face transplant.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe that's where it's coming from, and these guys are, they're just some bad wing out there in government or above government, private sector world, where where they're doing this stuff and trying to blame it on our visitors. But so far, I haven't seen any human mutilation stuff. I've heard anecdotes about people seeing limbs and flying saucers, and I don't know how to address that. All I really have to go by is the cases that I've had, and there's a lot of them, and it seems like they're trying to understand our world-like nature, the duality of mankind, of humankind, where we're able to write love sonnets and symphonies, and we gave the universe the Beatles and Bach and Picasso and Rembrandt, and yet here we are at this late stage in our evolutionary development, and we're still our worst enemy. It's like the old Pogo cartoon by Kelly. We've seen the enemy, and he's us. And I think that I have that cartoon over here, because it's, for me, it rings true. And I think that there is a concern for us. I do think that probably the benevolents are in charge, because here we still are. But are there pirates and robber barons and in the cosmos other than us? Probably.
There's gotta be.
But
There's gotta be a.
but I don't think that.
Yeah. There's got like it. It's yin and yang. With positive comes negative, right? It is like
Yeah.
from the cosmic scale down to the molecular scale. There's an equal and or an action and a equal or opposite
Opposite
reaction,
reaction.
right? It's good, evil, you name it. There's just there's got to be, there's one and the other, and without one, it's the scales too heavy on one side. So, I think with one comes the other. And, with the human race, we see this. Most of us just want to get through the day. We just want to we hold the doors for people. We smile, we're engaged, but we have our bad days, right? Yada yada. But there are people who wake up and they're just like, they're evil and they're master manipulators, and they're out for themselves. So, we see this on our on human scale. So
That's
I
all we
we
have to
see.
go by.
But what I was getting
Really. I
to,
mean,
yeah,
dolphins and whales, and we're learning to communicate possibly with them.
right. Well, what I
But
was getting to
that's what we
was,
have to go by.
what do you?
And not all Gandhis.
Yeah, sorry. I think there's a little delay in the audio. You're cutting in and cutting in a little bit. But someone brought it up earlier. What's your take on this? So David Grush did talk about an agreement with non-human intelligence. To your best knowledge, what would you say that leans more towards, like, um a technology switch, or like, you guys can take refuge in the ocean, and operate in these areas, and do this, and we want this. Do you think
I don't
that
know.
could be?
I think it could be, and some people say Eisenhower had that meeting, and that I mean, how do you disagree with any kind of agreement when you're dealing with technology that may be thousands and maybe even a million years, more advanced than your own? So I'm sure that he probably had to come up with some kind of an agreement, if that's true. But I mean, I can't speak to power on that, because the stories are out there, and even his granddaughter is out there and talks about it. But I don't have, like, the material to go by in front of me to say this happened. But that is definitely a story you hear out there. It makes sense. I mean, there's that wonderful book about Jackie Gleason and Richard
Yeah,
Nixon.
yeah, Richard Nixon. Yep.
Paul, what's his name? Paul Smith, I think, is right. The author. Oh God, he's going to be mad at me. But if you go and look, put UFOs and Nixon and Jackie Gleason into the Google machine, it'll come up. And I think that there have been presidents that have certainly known about this. The word is that perhaps not all presidents are read into this now, because uh, it's thought of more as a temporary job. Yeah, maybe just a
Yeah,
4-year
yeah,
job, right? So I think that
yeah.
they
I
may be more
mean,
careful about how much they tell. But back then, I
they're
think that
absolutely.
he probably knew the whole thing.
They're absolutely, um, temporary employees. They're temps. And that's how the bureaucrats see them. And that's why, and especially if you're a president who's not willing to go along, if you're not a sociopath, if they don't, I'm sure they assess them, once they're in office, the bureaucrats that surround themselves, with these high ranking people, assess him. And is he a sociopath? Will he go along with the narrative? Will he keep his mouth shut? All right, no, then he's not going to be read into anything. Keep him on a need to know basis, and barely on that. And I really think
Yeah.
that's how it
I think
is.
that's probably the way it is. I think so too.
Yeah.
And the people that
And
know, I mean, it's so compartmentalized now. And I think, do you think that the military do you think they're the right gatekeepers for this stuff? I
I don't,
question that very deeply now. I mean, I think there
because
should be an organization apart from the military that is dealing with this. That's not, because the military, of course, it's about threat assessment, and how might we, uh, how might we exploit this resource as weaponry against our enemies, and that's not diplomacy. That's not looking with an eye to the future and where we might actually be able to evolve to as a species ourselves. It's very pretty nuts and bolts attitude towards not very nuts and bolts phenomenon. It definitely has its nuts and bolts to it,
yeah,
but
it reminds me.
there's this whole
It,
other element to it. You know,
it reminds me of the movie Arrival, by my buddy, Denny Villeneuve. he did an amazing job at that film with,
Beautiful
just
film.
how the, how it was the military, and the theme, and what to take away from that film is, when we go in with a shoot first, ask questions later mentality, we are going, like, that is not a civilization that is honestly ready to advance. It's not. If that's who we are, we need to be going in there with a diplomat, with doctors. If something crashes, there should be a doctor, that and a team of people that are sent in, that know how to handle situations like this. If we know how to retrieve, if crash retrieval programs exist and we know what's going on, we shouldn't be going in with military assets. We should be going in with first aid and FEMA style, like, let's save
Yes.
them, and hopefully create some sort of relationship with them, like they try to come here. It's crazy to me and we saw this with sadly, we're going to get
I agree.
a banner on this video now, but we saw with COVID that it was immediately politicized. It's and militarized it, and so it's just everything is taken and militarized, and it's
That's what we
for
do.
profit.
It's all a game, it's like the football game where, who's going to win. But the problem with this is that it's about human survival. It's about us becoming, better humans. I mean, I don't think that this is the finished product. I think that we have a ways to go. And right now, if we were let out into the universe, I'm afraid that we would just see the behavior that we see humans doing on the globe. It would just be exponential. It would be out there, and I can understand why there would be concern about letting that out there. I mean, it's. But I think that if we show good faith with what we have, and that we can advance as a species, become better humans. I mean, that's what I'm all about, I guess. Is if I have a mission, I feel like we can be better humans, and that this is the wedge issue that will be able to push us to that point. That we will be, we will be space worthy someday. But right now, we're not ready for prime time, kids. I mean, I'm afraid that if we get to Mars, it's going to become like Mars is going to wage war against Earth, and it won't be Martians; it'll be Earthlings that have gone to Mars. I mean, I could just human nature, and this is our terrain, and you're not going to, we're going to do it our way, and it just there isn't a whole lot of good interaction between people in this world, and to bring it out into a greater scale, I can see why there's concern in the cosmic realm. I think we can better ourselves. I don't think this is their first rodeo, and I think they've seen similar scenarios like our own. If we look at the stars at night, just go out to a desert vista and look up, and you're not seeing the whole picture even then. Now with the James Webb telescope, we're getting a little bit better. Yeah, it's just like every grain of sand. So I don't believe that we're the first rodeo here, and hopefully they know our type well enough, and their patience is as such that we can join that great Star Trek reality that I think is actually out there. I think it is out there.
Yeah, I think it is too, and I think it's just we just have to reach our hand out and accept the invitation. And currently, we are not ready, and our raised our vibration consciously. And do you think, the one last thing before I let you go and talk to us? I want you to tell us about what you have coming up and what you have going on. But
Sure.
do you think that they're possibly not letting us? Because people ask, why haven't we been back to the moon? Why haven't we? Why hasn't there really been any space
It's
aside
above my
from
pay grade.
probes?
I
What do
can't
you
tell you for sure. It's above my pay grade, and they aren't saying. But I
could
guess we'll
they be
find
keeping
out.
us? Could they be keeping us from?
Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe. I
maybe.
honestly don't
Interesting.
know that though. I don't know the
Yeah.
answer, but it's a
Well,
possibility. We went before. I mean, we did go. I'm not a moon landing denier. Rocketdyne was 20 miles away from my home growing up, and you'd hear those Saturn V rockets revving up. They were doing the tests there, 20 miles away from us, and so
yeah, they
guys
were
want to say
seeing
we didn't go to
UFOs.
the moon. Well, where did those rockets
Yeah,
go? And I mean, come on. They
and
saw stuff up
they were
there.
seeing
I
the
mean, astronauts do
yeah,
have to
they were
sign
seeing
NDAs
UFOs up
because they
there.
see stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, apparently,
absolutely, they were seeing stuff
and
up there.
still do.
So apparently they were so it was so prevalent that it was a part of just like an everyday thing. Like, oh, there are neighbors, you know.
Yeah,
But tell
it's
us,
not
Earl, what
surprising to me.
in July, I'm going to be at a symposium in Texas that you're going to be at. Tell us
Can't
more
wait.
about, yeah, man, tell us more. And I'm going to be doing, because the YouTube channel is right now I'm filming my first documentary, but after this, we're going to be doing what I call um, um, profiles on people in ufology. And we're going to follow a person around each follow each person around for a day in the life of that person. And you've agreed to be one of the first few that I do this with, so I'm super excited about
Okay.
that. And so
Well,
I
that'll be
just I
fun.
announced, yeah, I'm announcing that now. And Mario Woods is another one. So it's going to be really cool. And I'm working with Dan Zetterstrom from that UFO podcast on these projects. So it's going to be an amazing
Cool.
quality, and it's just going to be amazing. So
I'm going to be
you're
real
going to be,
busy at the MUFON Symposium in July,
yeah,
but
tell
I've
me what
got
you're
like
doing.
one. Sure, I have one event that we're doing that's on the Friday. I don't have the date sitting here in front of me, but it's mid-July, where it's going to be called UFOs Next Generation. I've got Geraldine Stith, who is one of the Kelly Hopkinsville. She's the daughter of the main witness of that whole event, and she grew up hearing those stories in that same house. And she's an authority on that strange uh, alien incursion on their farm. There was also I have Kenneth Arnold's granddaughter, Chanel Shands, who's going to be talking about her grandfather's sighting at Mount Rainier, the first flying saucer sighting. He coined the term flying saucer.
But it was
And
more
I
like
also
a
have an
feel.
expert. Yeah, they were crescent shaped, but he said that they
But
acted
he
like if
said
you
they're
threw a saucer on
skipping.
water.
Yeah, they
That
were
they
skipping
they
like
they the way
saucers.
they move, they skipped. I
Yeah.
also have Daniel Allen Smith. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm messing up your name, but he is Jim Marr's old protege, and they were working on a book about the Aurora, Texas UFO crash from 1897. I'm going to have each one of them give a podium lecture, a short lecture, and then we're going to reconvene around a round table and do and do a conversation about how to understand the UAP of today, you have to understand the UFO of yesteryear, and that no matter how officialdom may want to rebrand this phenomenon, it's the same phenomenon, and it's been with us for years, and probably centuries and maybe forever. And that's my feeling. And so that's where we're going to go with this. And there will be a question and answer thing at the end. Also, on Sunday night at the symposium, we have the best of the ERT, where we're going to share 5 of the very best experience or resource teams, very best cases, along with witnesses, the original investigator that investigated the cases. One of those cases will be the now famous Jackrabbit case. I guess I can mention Susan Alloway because she's gone public. And she will be there, and as well as the police detective, field investigator that I assigned that case to. So I'll be part of both of those. I'll also be talking about the experience or resource team at the MUFON boot camp on Thursday. Be there or be square. It's the place to be for if you want to know about this phenomenon this summer in July. Dallas, Texas, Fort Worth. Also, I've got a new TV show that just came out that you can get on Amazon Prime that's called The Alien Disclosure Files. I'm on the last 6 episodes as the main UFO authority. And I'm also on Steve Bassett's new show, Paradigm Shift, that just came out yesterday. And if you go and Google that, it'll pop up. So very, very busy, very thrilled.
That's amazing.
And one more thing to say: Sev Talk and myself, both of us are Kathleen Martin's mentees. She mentored both of us. We are the new hosts for KRGA's MUFON Radio. It's now called MUFON Contact Radio. And we will be premiering on April 2nd on KGRA. And our first guest will be Kathleen Martin. So that's my world in a nutshell for you.
I would love to come on that show. I've had both of you on here. So if you're ever
cool. I may have I may have a podcasters panel show.
yeah.
And that would be fun.
Like do a round table.
So
you can do a round table. Yeah, of course.
We can do that. We can do that. So,
but
much to
you
come,
and I have plenty. You and I have plenty in the works, and we're both in the HDA, and we're talking.
Love the HDA.
And love it. I really do. I love it. It's a great way to network. And
Dan Harari and Steve Bassett.
Yep, great guys. Great friends. Great friends too.
God bless them, man. I love those guys.
So everybody,
I'm so glad you're members. So.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being on the show tonight, Earl. You are, like I said, a busy man, state director of Southern California, MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, where if you see a UFO, you can report it at MUFON.com. Yeah, report your UFO sightings, guys, because that's how we collect data, and that's how we gain an understanding. So if you do see something, say something. So with that being said, this video has been brought to you by Adentia Herbals and their product BioMind. Get 25% off exclusively by Total Disclosure using that code, Total Disclosure, at checkout at AdentiaHerbals.com. Earl, you're the best. I love you, and we will talk very soon.